President Joe Biden finally addressed the rise in violent crime in an address to the nation yesterday. So, how did it go? Well, besides threatening to nuke U.S. citizens and offering no practical solutions to actually curb violent crime, went great. Oh, I'll give you my analysis of Biden's latest dud in tonight's Hold the Line.
Gun dealers feel like they can get away with selling guns to people who aren't legally allowed to own them. And I might add, the Second Amendment from the day it was passed limited the type of people who could own a gun and what type of weapon you could own. You couldn't buy a cannon.
Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. You actually could have cannons in the early days of this republic, but does it really matter what the facts are to Joe Biden? No, of course not. Why did we get a speech? I mean, you could have taken the Biden speech on gun control yesterday and replayed it 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 50 years ago. Wouldn't have made any difference. Well, maybe 50 years ago. 5 years in the future, the Democrats will be saying the same thing. They'll be telling you if only Republicans were willing to allow more annoying, almost entirely irrelevant gun regulations, if only they would do that, we would have a huge decrease in violent crime. Shootings would just absolutely plummet. They never actually stopped to look at and deal with the data about things like the enormous increase in private gun ownership in America over the last 20 years and the precipitous decline in shootings and violence nationwide that has occurred during that same time period. Oh, but then you'd say, why are we talking about the violent crime surge now? Well, that's right. In the last year, we have seen a change in the nationwide trend. The worst violence numbers we've seen in 20 years. Why is that? They want to pretend that they think it's guns. They don't really believe that. They have to come up with something, though. And that's why they say things. Joe Biden says things like, we have to limit your ability to own, say, an AR-15 because deer don't wear Kevlar vests.
The things we know about. Background checks for purchasing a firearm are important. Ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. No one needs to have a weapon that can fire over 30, 40, 50, even up to 100 rounds, unless you think the deer are wearing Kevlar vests or something.
I mean, is he honestly just an idiot? It's tough to know sometimes. What does that even mean? What does a Kevlar vest have to do with having magazine capacity limitations? Of course, I know he was trying to be funny, but it's just all nonsense. It's just all malarkey, to borrow from Grandpa Joe. He doesn't know what the heck he's talking about. Of course, he was a proponent of some gun control measures back in the 90s. What did those actually do? Well, if you look at the data, nothing. Didn't stop violence, didn't stop violent crime, because there are already a lot of laws out there. There are already a lot of regulations about the sale of guns. There already are background checks that are in place for a vast majority of the sales that occur nationwide, especially any sale that occurs through a licensed firearms dealer. There must be, as a function of law, background checks done. Is it really the position of the Democrats that if we got rid of assault rifles, what? The 93% plus, 95% actually, I think, plus of shootings that occur in this country that involve handguns, they'd be completely untouched by that. There have still been mass shootings with handguns. But even getting into the details just goes to show you how absurd and dizzyingly nonsensical so many of the Democrat policies on this actually are. And that's why you have to ask, why are they bringing this up now? What's the reason for this? Let's really get down to it, shall we? Well, we all know that you just had the most pro-police mayoral candidate on the Democrat side win in New York City, running on essentially a platform of, I'm going to support the cops. Defund police is stupid. And now the Democrats have to reckon with the reality of an American population that overall, the ones who aren't lunatics who watch too much MSNBC, find themselves wondering, what exactly did we get from the defund police movement and Black Lives Matter over the last 12 months, other than more shootings and more violence? That's a question they don't want you to think about. So now they're even getting more desperate Gun control is, of course, a distraction, but they go beyond gun control in trying to say that, oh, this is the White House press secretary with a straight face doing the most absurd mental gymnastics you've seen, I'm sure, in a long time in that West Wing. Well, maybe not that long. She says some pretty crazy stuff. But Republicans are the ones who are responsible for the defund the police narrative. Does she really want to push this? Apparently she does. Here you go.
Well, I think the president believes that we shouldn't allow access to guns to those criminals who are currently illegally buying them from some dealers across the country. And part of his announcement is taking steps to do exactly that. But part of his announcement is also ensuring there's specific guidance to communities across the country to ensure that they have funding to get more community police around the country, something that was supported by the American Jobs Plan that was voted into law by Democrats just a couple of months ago. Some might say that the other party was for defunding the police. I'll let others say that.
I mean, that's one of the dumbest things I've heard in a very long time, right? Oh, yes, Republicans are the defund the police party now. But it's just all meant to muddy the waters. It's meant to create a smokescreen, meant to make sure that people can't really see the truth. Wait, hold on. Now Democrats are saying Republicans are the ones that are for defund the police? Well, that's how bad it's gotten. They wish they could hang this on the Republican Party's neck, but they won't be able to. It's not going to work. But they're desperate. They're desperate because anyone who has been paying attention has seen that the defund narrative is absolutely insane, absurd, and deeply destructive. But that doesn't mean every Democrat. There are some Democrats who are still clinging to this. Ayanna Pressley, member of the Squad, oh yeah, still supports defund, but she calls it radical reimagining.
Yes, I support a radical reimagining of community safety and public safety, which means reallocating and not further investing in a carceral state.
All right.
Especially done when we have not yet ended qualified immunity.
I mean, what does she even say? Okay, reimagine how? Use your imagination. Reimagine it for us. What does that mean? No more cops? Far fewer cops? Take a position and defend it. Oh, getting rid of qualified immunity? That's a stupid position. She can keep repeating it, but law enforcement officers won't do their jobs if they can be individually sued at a moment's notice by anyone they arrest. So, does she have a real idea? No. That's why it's reimagining police. An unserious but deeply destructive slogan that Democrats are now going to hide behind as defund gets thrown on the trash heap where it belongs. All right, after the break, more on Biden's speech with senior columnist and veteran from a senior columnist at townhall.com and veteran of the United States military, that is, Kurt Schlichter. Stay right there. Have you ever wanted to invest in real estate, but you don't want to make big rookie mistakes in the early stages? I felt exactly the same way as you until a little over a year ago. I always loved the idea of real estate investments, steady, predictable, but I didn't want to make those big early stage errors that can cost you a lot of the upside. That's when I met my friends at Done For You Real Estate. They took all of the guesswork out of it for me. They found me an amazing property. They rented it out for me right away. They managed the tenant for me, and now I get a check every month like clockwork. Don't wait another second to see if my buddies at Done For You Real Estate can do for you what they did for me. Visit doneforyoubuck.com today to see how it works. Again, every step of the process, from picking the city, the house, getting the loan set up, getting a tenant in place, and a management company to handle the whole thing for you. Just go to doneforyoubuck.com to see what my friends at Done For You Real Estate can do for you. That's doneforyoubuck.com to begin your real estate investment journey. President Biden's speech on controlling violent crime wasn't his finest performance, right? Besides the obvious deficiency from a policy perspective, the New York Post editorial board noted that Biden looked confused and kind of out of it, frequently slurring his words, speaking in a monotone, and referring to the ATF as the AFT. Yeah. Then there was this moment, which is drawing scrutiny from supporters of the Second Amendment. Check it out.
Those who say the blood of patriots, and all the stuff about how we're going to have to move against the government. Well, the tree of liberty is not water with the blood of patriots. What's happened is that there never been, if you wanted to think you need to have weapons to take on the government, you need F-15s and maybe some nuclear weapons.
Yeah. Don't bother with the AR-15s, folks. The government will just nuke you into submission or something like that. Joining me now, senior columnist for townhall.com, Kurt Schlichter. Kurt, great to have you.
Well, great to be here. I'm a little baffled as how that desiccated old weirdo got to be our president. Holy cow. Holy cow, Buck.
A nation of 330 million, and this guy's been trying for the last, let's call it 35 years, and now all of a sudden he's actually the commander-in-chief and saying something so stupid that I think even the comment section of the HuffPost would be like, okay, that's kind of a dumb comment about how we have nukes, so who needs guns to fight back against tyranny?
Yeah, well, actually, I think the HuffPost would probably like it because I have no doubt that if they could do away with a good chunk of American patriots, they probably would. That's how Marxists work. I'm still trying to add all this stuff up on Twitter, Buck. I offered some questions for the licensed regime journalists who couldn't think of the obvious ones, like, are you saying you'd use F-15s and nuclear weapons against Americans who didn't obey you, Mr. President? And some more specific ones, like, how many brigade combat teams do you think we have? And how many do you think it would take to suppress the people of the United States of America if they decided they were tired of your nonsense?
You know, there's also the whole lack of, it seems, any familiarity from Joe Biden as the commander-in-chief here with Afghanistan, Vietnam, the history of people with small arms defeating sometimes even global superpowers. Oh, I don't know, like the American colonists, the Patriots, defeating the British Empire. Turns out that having an armed population matters.
Well, you know, I wouldn't know about any of this history because, as you know, history began in 1619 and then skipped ahead to 2008 when Obama got elected. So I'm kind of unclear on it, but I hear there was this thing called Vietnam. I hear there was this thing called the American Revolution. And although you wouldn't know it from the mainstream media, I hear there's this thing called Afghanistan kind of petering out right now. And that involved large numbers of unorganized military fighters using small arms to run rings around a superpower. And I'm not great at math, Buck, but I do know that if there are 100 million Americans with guns, and there's about 2 million in the entire military, and of course, if all of them showed up, instead of a bunch of them going, nah, not having any part of killing my own friends and family, you're still 50-1.
Yeah, I think that the whole check against tyranny thing, if you just do a basic order of battle here, which is kind of what you did for us on the air, and also to keep in mind, as we all know, that you would never get to a situation where you would have all the military deciding they're going to go tyrannical against the United States people, because they are the United States people and of the United States. But let's also just get into, speaking of the military, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Milley, this one just on my desk over here, he was asked about CRT. I got a lot to ask you about this, Kurt, but let's just see what he says first.
On the issue of critical race theory, et cetera, I'll obviously have to get much smarter on whatever the theory is. But I do think it's important, actually, for those of us in uniform to be open-minded and be widely read. And the United States Military Academy is a university. And it is important that we train and we understand. And I want to understand white rage, and I'm white. And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers, of being, quote, woke or something else because we're studying some theories that are out there.
I just want to say I view this as yet another data point in the, whenever you see someone in the military with multiple stars on their shoulder, be very suspect of whatever pronouncements they're going to make outside of, send the tanks at the bad guys.
Well, look, let's break some of this down. Yeah, as you know, I'm also a trial lawyer, so I'm kind of familiar with my cheesy distraction techniques. I particularly like, oh, well, I'm so offended that you would be criticizing me. Well, let's explore that a little more. Here's the chain of command as it applies to this. American citizens, right? Then our elected representatives, and then government functionaries, of which he is one. So his being offended, not really anything I care about. And I would submit if some major stood up and said, General Milley, I'm very offended that you were mean to me when my in-depth briefing failed to satisfy your intent. And General Milley, everyone stop. Let's make this major feel better. I bet that's happened exactly 0 times. And it should not happen in Congress, where he comes to answer to the representatives of his commanders. What a shameful display. As for, oh, we're just studying other ideas, well, he mentioned that he likes to study Lenin and Mao too, which I think is a good idea. You should know what your enemies think. CRT is our enemy, Buck. We should know what they think so we can destroy this poisonous ideology.
Even Fido in the background there gets upset when we're being told that CRT should be read by our military. So, no, your dog is anti-woke. Doesn't like this nonsense that's being spewed
woke.
Here.
No, look, we're taking woke
there we go.
for ourselves. Woke is our word.
I thought we were taking based on the right. I can't keep up with all this stuff, but good to see you, Kurt, man. Thanks as always for weighing in.
Thank you. And my dog says bye, too.
My regards. All right, they're calling it dereliction of duty. A group of members of Congress are forwarding a resolution that would hold President Biden accountable for his lack of action on the southern border. Representative Lauren Boebert of Colorado is leading the charge. She's going to join us to talk about all those details. Stick around. I've been telling you for a while now about online thieves who can easily steal your home's title, but you don't have to take my word for it. Take it from this thief who stole over 150 homes and was sentenced to 25 years in prison. This is why you need Home Title Lock.
Nobody thinks that I can take their house and borrow against the house. Oh, no, I have title insurance for that. No, it's in my name, or he would have to get some special document. They would call me. You know, nobody's calling you. After I've stolen the title, borrowed against it, or sold the property, or done whatever I've done with it, it's 60 to 90 days to even figure out that they're the victim of this crime. You know, by that point, you start getting foreclosure notices, and you realize you've got 4 mortgages on your house. Not only that, you don't even own your home anymore. It's not even in your name.
Heard enough? Don't let this crime happen to you. Go to HometitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim and enter code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. That's code RADIO at HometitleLock.com.
I am proud to lead my colleagues in filing a bill to censure President Joe Biden for his dereliction of duty and failing to secure the southern homeland.
Colorado Representative Lauren Boebert introduced a bill to censure President Biden for dereliction of duty regarding his border crisis, and she joins us now to talk about it. Congresswoman, great to have you as always.
Thanks so much for having me on. And I just want you to know, we didn't introduce this censure resolution flippantly or without serious consideration. As you know, myself and all 435 of my colleagues took an oath when we were sworn into office, and I take that oath very seriously. President Biden also took an oath and swore to do his duty under Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution to take care that our laws are faithfully executed. But he's failed to do so. We have the laws on the book, like Immigration and Nationality Act, that has been passed by both the House and the Senate, signed by the president, and this administration is failing to enforce them.
So your resolution expresses disapproval for the failure to uphold constitutional duty to take care the laws be faithfully executed and the usurpation of the legislative authority of Congress by the President of the United States. Is there any next step from this, or is this just getting the word out?
You know, Buck, we have to continue to communicate to the American people exactly what is happening at our southern border, and that the President of the United States has created this crisis. Arrests for drug smuggling has increased 266%. Catching known murderers trying to cross our borders has increased by more than 1,000%. Arrests for sexual offenders has increased over 100%. We've gone from 1,400 children in HHS custody under President Trump to 22,000 children in custody under the Biden regime when I was just in the McAllen area, McAllen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley sector just last month. And while we have this surge at our border, a national and humanitarian crisis, this administration hasn't visited once, and they're lying to the American people, calling the border closed. So I led 23 of my colleagues to say that this is shameful. This is an embarrassment, and President Biden needs to be held accountable for what's happening, and he needs to be held accountable by being censured. But we're hearing now from the press secretary that they're bragging about the reduction of children in HHS custody. But that doesn't mean that the traffic has slowed down. That doesn't mean that the crossings have reduced. That means that they are doing a better job of transporting illegal aliens all throughout our country. I was in the McAllen airport, and I saw dozens of groups of people with instructions on how to board their aircraft and get to their final destination. And these people are being put on our our airplanes, and they're not citizens. They don't have ID. And guess who's going to end up footing the bill for that? We, the taxpayers.
Congresswoman Boebert, excuse me. Want to ask you also what you think about Kamala making her first trip down to the border just tomorrow. It's supposed to happen, I believe, just in time to beat President Trump, who announced that he's going down next week. Do you think is it really just that she couldn't be the border czar who gets beaten to the border by Trump?
Yes, well, I'm proud to say I was the first to get her down there. I brought flat cackling Kamala down to the border to see exactly what these policies have done with her cardboard cutout. However, Buck, I think more than anything, this proves that President Trump is still leading on the issues. He announces that he's going down to the border, and all of a sudden, Democrats want to look at this like there's an actual problem going on, because there is. Unfortunately, Kamala is going to the border after nearly 100 days of what exactly? She's been doing that. What exactly has she been doing that's so important? Will she also lie to the American people and say that the border is closed? We'll be satisfied whenever she sees the crisis firsthand. But unfortunately, the location that she has announced that she's going to won't show the American people exactly how devastating our border is. She needs to go down to the Rio Grande Valley sector. I've talked to Democrats who have been down to the border and say that this is where she needs to be. This is a political stunt. She is going to the portion of the border that is most politically appeasing for her. And guess what, Buck? It is the most secure portion of our southern border. She's basically just going to visit President Trump's wall.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it. Is the expectation of this border surge, in your mind, what should it be with all the illegal crossings, the apprehensions, as well as the gotaways that are happening month to month, setting new records? Is there any reason to believe this is going to stop? I mean, it may dip a bit this summer because of the hot weather, which always brings down illegal crossings a little bit. That's just the way this goes. But then the idea would be that it's likely to surge again in September and October. Does the Biden administration, or do any of your colleagues, Democrat colleagues in Congress, have a plan to deal with this, to make it stop?
Buck, unfortunately, there is no plan to deal with this from the Democrat Party, from the Biden regime. We all look at this and we see that this is a crisis. We talk to the farmers and ranchers who have property on the border and near the border, whose property are being destroyed by illegal aliens, breaking their fences and harassing their livestock and their homes. We have farmers and ranchers who will leave their doors unlocked because they know if they leave them unlocked and they're not home, then illegal aliens who are passing through will stop and go and politely get what they need and leave. But if they lock their door, then their homes will be broken into. So we all see this and know that it is a crisis. But I believe that the Biden regime says that this is mission accomplished, and that's why we haven't seen any action from them. Without a secure southern border, every state is a border state. I met with sheriffs and police chiefs in my counties, in my district, and they said we're already seeing devastating impacts of this surge in our district. More drugs, more illegal aliens, more crime, and this has to stop. Buck, I have the I-70 interstate that goes through my district, and that is a huge drug corridor from Mexico to Chicago, and our law enforcement officers aren't even equipped to make the stops necessary and house these criminals that are coming through. So everyone is just getting a free pass to bring in methamphetamines, fentanyl, and all of this illegal activity into our country.
Congressman, I also want to ask you about the speech that Joe Biden gave yesterday on gun control. Why do you think he gave a speech yesterday on gun control? What was that all about?
I don't think that Joe Biden knows what his speech was about yesterday. I thought that we were going to start to quote some founding fathers there, but he didn't quite get it. Joe Biden said that he was going to go after merchants of death, referring to illegal gun sales. But my first reaction was, if you want to go after merchants of death, there are 600 Planned Parenthood clinics I can point him to. But if he's really concerned about illegal gun sales, what about all the illegal guns that are going across the southern border? I mean, this goes right back full circle. We want to circle back. Let's go back to the border and get it secure. We need infrastructure. We need resources. And all of this ties together. If you want to stop illegal gun sales, start with the criminals, not the law-abiding law-abiding citizens. But in all seriousness, the Biden regime is trying to blame gun owners for the rise in crime in cities throughout America. That is laughable, almost a cackling laugh, if you will. Democrats have encouraged riots in our streets, defunding the police, and now want to blame law-abiding gun owners.
Congressman, thanks so much. Always appreciate it. Good to see you.
Thanks so much, Buck.
A recent straw poll putting Ron DeSantis over President Trump for the 2024 Republican nomination is leading to growing buzz around the Florida governor. So whose party is it, Trump or DeSantis? Amber Athey, the Washington editor at The Spectator, has some thoughts on the matter. She'll be with us when we come back. Ron DeSantis is certainly gaining favorability, from his handling of the pandemic to fighting big tech and critical race theory in his state. The first-term governor has earned some real adoration from the right, with his approval ratings reaching 64%. So is it already time to start pulling out the DeSantis 2024 gear? Let's ask Washington editor at The Spectator, Amber Athey. Amber, great to see you.
Thanks for having me, Buck.
So we know that DeSantis beat Trump in a straw poll conducted during June's Western Conservative Summit out in Denver. What do you make of all this?
It certainly looks like DeSantis is starting to overtake the former president as the favorite heading in to 2024. And that's, of course, if former President Donald Trump even decides to run. If he does, that will throw a wrench in the plans of most of the other Republicans who would like to be in the field. But look, DeSantis has really padded his resume over the past few months. He started, of course, with his expert handling of the pandemic, where other governors flinched and imposed massive restrictions on their states and on their economies. But that's not all that he did. He's signed a litany of bills advancing conservative priorities, from attacking big tech censorship to making sure that public schools avoid critical race theory and instead teach the evils of communism. He prevented companies in his state from asking for vaccine passports and won a pretty crucial battle with cruise lines. So he's shown conservatives what it looks like when you use government power in order to actually achieve tangible goals which is something that the populist movement born from Trump's 2016 victory has been asking for a long time.
Amber, I've spoken to folks who are down in Florida and follow the politics there very closely and within their home state. And some of them have admitted to me, and some of them have even said it on air on my shows, that they're kind of surprised at how legit Ronnie D has actually been in this whole process. They remember when he was a member of Congress, and look, it's pleasant surprise, but did we have any indicators back when DeSantis was merely Congressman DeSantis and not quite the governor yet of Florida that he was going to take up much of the mantle of MAGA-ism?
There were a few. So he was pretty good on foreign policy in Congress, even though that wasn't his main beat. He wanted to pull troops from Afghanistan. He was skeptical of getting involved in the civil war in Syria. And he was also one of the founding members of the House Freedom Caucus, but he wasn't a very famous or popular member of Congress. And so it's totally fair for people to be surprised because it does feel like in many ways he came out of nowhere. But as Florida commentator Dave Reboy explained to me, Ron DeSantis was an avid listener of Rush Limbaugh, and that's where he gets a lot of his no-holds-barred aggressive fights against the left and the media and the turning tide of culture towards Marxism. So he is someone who fully understands governance. He is an impressive lawyer, so he understands how policy works, how the law works, and he also is really good on personnel. He has a close team that he can trust, including, of course, his wife, Casey, which was a major problem that plagued the Trump White House, which was full of leaks and deception.
Now, how does the Trump apparatus, from what we can tell, how do they feel about Ron DeSantis? Is there a little bit of hesitation because it's not clear yet if the big guy, in this case the big guy being former President Donald Trump, decides to throw his hat into the ring? Or have they already established that, at least for now, it's all good in the Sunshine State and Trump and DeSantis camps, and they're willing to work together and help each other?
At this point, they're coexisting for sure. But if President Donald Trump does decide to run again, there will be a major battle with him trying to get any other potential Republicans out of the race. And I expect that most other Republicans will step aside because they would be fighting a losing battle. However, in Trump world, there are quite a few camps in terms of Trump being the kingmaker in 2024 and who they want him to endorse. So there's rumors that Jared and Ivanka are pushing more for Nikki Haley, who's more of an establishment Republican, who would be more of a neocon in office, definitely not on board with this populist movement. Whereas there are other advisors to the former president who would push for someone like DeSantis or maybe even Kristi Noem out of South Dakota. So things are still very much up in the air, but you cannot ignore the popular sentiment for DeSantis, particularly how popular he is in his home state of Florida, which is still technically a swing state.
What do you think people are going to be looking for in the months ahead from the DeSantis camp? Do we have some sense of what else? I mean, now that we're coming out of the pandemic, that was clearly a point of major separation for Governor DeSantis from pretty much every other governor across the country. There were some who were close to some of his policies, but nobody was leading the way like he was. Do we know what's next on the agenda? Because, Amber, quite honestly, I keep waiting for him to go a little too establishment squish or to just rest on his laurels a little bit. It feels like every week I see another legitimate conservative decision and action from the governor of Florida.
It is pretty crazy that he has yet to disappoint like Kristi Noem did or Asia Hutchinson did when they failed to sign those bills banning transgender or biological men, I should say, from competing in women's sports. DeSantis signed a similar bill promising to take on the NCAA rather than being worried about losing their business through competitions and tournaments from his state. I think the next things coming down the pipeline will be more attacks on critical race theory. That's an issue that continues to gain prominence throughout the country, particularly just outside of the D.C. area in Fairfax and Loudoun County in Virginia, where parents are attending these board meetings pretty aggressively and trying to prevent their kids from being taught this divisive theory. As for what else comes down the pipeline, I, for one, am excited to see what DeSantis is willing to tackle next, because he does seem to be pretty fearless, and fingers crossed we do not eventually get disappointed. It's always dangerous, of course, to put too much faith in political leaders.
Totally agree with you on that one. Amber, good work on this. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Buck.
After the break, a warning from Dr. Anthony Fauci about the dangers of the Delta variant, and it was apparently too crazy even for this White House. We have the video that the Biden administration didn't want you to see coming up in Quick Hits. We're living in very uncertain times, and being prepared for the unknown is more important than ever. I'm sure you've noticed that this America we're living in today under the Biden administration is anything but predictable. The government is passing massive spending bills. Federal Reserve is printing trillions of dollars of fiat currency, and many experts are predicting inflation could run rampant in the coming months. That could spell disaster for the dollars in your bank account. We could all benefit from something a little more reliable right about now. Well, what could be more reliable than real gold and silver? I'm talking about real gold and silver that you can actually hold right in your hands. Call the Oxford Gold Group right now and learn how easy it is to get real gold and silver sent securely directly to your home, or how you can have real gold and silver placed in your IRA or 401k. Just call the Oxford Gold Group at 833-600-GOLD and ask for your free guide on owning gold and silver. Again, call the Oxford Gold Group right now at 833-600-GOLD. The Oxford Gold Group is the only gold company I trust. Call them right now at 833-600-GOLD. One more time, that's 833-600-GOLD. A warning from Dr. Fauci ends up on the cutting room floor, and a Montana sheriff explains why he's leaving the Democratic Party. Those stories in Quick Hits. Let's jump into it, shall we? First off, Dr. Fauci. I know you think, Buck, Dr. Fauci is your nemesis in some ways. And it's not a personal thing. It's just I think he's been wrong and horrible for the country thing. But now people are catching on more than ever. I mean, it's been happening for a few months now, but this guy still likes to pop up and say, you know, there could be more variants, and, you know, I want to be on TV. You know, he keeps showing up, and all of a sudden we have to hear from this little totalitarian smurf as if he never really wants to step aside from the limelight. He wants to just keep the focus on him. We are past the pandemic. We are now at a point where we could say that COVID is a serious health challenge, but it is no longer a national emergency the way that it had been for so many months. Yet here is Biden tweeted out Biden tweeted out a video featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, but there's part of the video where Fauci tells people not to congregate, and that was cut out.
Vaccinated people, even though they're very, very well protected, they still should try as best as possible to avoid congregate settings in which there are a lot of unvaccinated people, particularly if you happen to live in an area where the infection rate is high and the vaccination rate is low.
I mean, this is crazy, right? We're talking about people that have a 90% plus, in some cases 95% plus protection as a result of having the vaccine. You already have about half the country vaccinated, close to it. And he's telling people to worry about congregate settings where there may be more people who are unvaccinated, as if you would know, by the way. But he's not going to let it go. He's decided that his position on all of this is to take the position of maximum fear-mongering, of course, and also to make sure that people don't start making reasonable risk judgments, I should say. And that's just what Fauci's all about. That's what Fauciism is. If there's a 1 in a billion chance that you could end up dying from something, you know, you better make sure you take a bunch of saran wrap, wrap it around your head, don't go outside, don't see anybody. That's what Fauci stands for. It's pretty horrific. A Montana sheriff for Cascade County has explained why he is leaving the Democratic Party. Let's take a look.
Unfortunately, throughout my term so far, I have repeatedly come under fire for my pro-Constitution beliefs. Twice in public meetings, Democrat elected officials have tried to censor my words and opinions because they did not agree with me. I've been chastised publicly and privately for standing up for people's individual rights and your Second Amendment rights. So I'm officially kicking off my re-election campaign to remain your sheriff. I hope I can count on your support as I move my name to the Republican ticket.
A Republican now. Always room in the Republican Party for reasonable people, for certainly members of law enforcement. I won't jump into why the sheriff was ever a Democrat, because we all know the Democrat Party and law enforcement are not exactly getting along very well and haven't for a long time. But hey, the water is warm, Sheriff. Come jump into the Team Republican pool party. That's what we're here for. Thank you for making the right choice in the end. Happy to see that. There's still a lot of folks out there who are making choices that I do not disagree with. Here is a left-wing mom. We find a lot of the craziest lib stuff on TikTok these days. You know, that social media app where people are worried that China's running a massive surveillance operation. But nah, come on, not China. They'd never do that. But here's a mom on TikTok explaining how she will not comfort her crying white girl baby.
So this morning, the baby woke up and had some sort of violence in her heart. I don't know what it was, but she has been losing her mind all day. And it's interesting because I'm watching her lose her mind, and then I'm watching the preteen respond to that by trying to make her happy. And I have had to actively tell him, stop trying to make her feel better, stop responding to her tears. It's so interesting to see the conditioning of people responding to white girl tears happening so early. She's 5, and she's got an 11-year-old coming after her trying to make her feel better when she cries. We have to unlearn this whole business that white women crying is going to get them what they want in life, because that ain't it.
I mean, the racialization of not just politics in America, but now child rearing, the white girl tears, this is bonkers. But you see it all across the country now in a lot of places. It's very concerning. It's why the fight against CRT is so essential, something we'll continue to follow very closely here on Hold the Line. That's it for tonight's show. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly is up next. Shields high.